Despite traders being in the safe haven search, Scandinavian currencies have been somewhat overlooked. Have the Skandies lost their shine? Joining me down the line to discuss is Arne Lohmann Rasmussen. Arne, a dovish central bank and slowing economic growth do seem to be taking the gleam off Norway's currency. On Thursday, the krona hit its lowest point in 9 years against its Swedish counterpart. The latest trigger for the krone sell-off was Norway's CPI and earlier PMIs for the manufacturing sector falling to 52.3, which, while still above the 50 mark, is disappointing compared to Sweden's 56. Do you believe the krone has lost its crown?
There's no doubt about. At the moment, the Skandies have become a bit out of fashion. I think there's several reasons for that. First of all, what we saw in 2012 was, of course, a strong focus on safe haven currencies, especially to hedge against the euro debt crisis. The euro debt crisis is definitely in retreat now. People are moving back into Italy and Spain, so they don't need the safe haven of Sweden and Norway. And then I think, secondly, that the expectations has run a bit ahead of itself. People believe that the Riksbank and also the Norges Bank would be eager to hike rates, that the economy would continue booming. But especially in Norway, we have actually seen disappointing numbers over the summer. The inflation data today was just the latest example where growth in Q2 was actually very sluggish. The central banks, they have in general been to the soft side. Norges Bank only made a very little revision to the rate path last time, despite the currency being weaker, despite higher inflation and so on. And in Sweden, we've recently seen comments from some of the more hawkish Riksbank members like Jansson, saying that the market was pricing rate hikes in too early. So they have definitely lost a bit of its shine. From a fundamental point of view, they are probably at an attractive level now, but we need to have a bit more clarity over the situation. We need to have confirmation that data are not worsening even more. And then finally, especially for the Norwegian kroner, probably also one of the reasons why it has suffered against the Swedish kroner is that liquidity at the moment is very poor.
Denmark has struggled to boost consumer confidence since a property bubble burst in 2008, which had left many people wary of spending, while the global financial crisis has dampened demand for exports. Now, given that the economic crisis now appears to be in retreat and the Danish economy expanded slightly last quarter, do you think this will soon translate into improved and sustained consumer spending?
I think there's small but incipient signs that things are actually improving in Denmark. Consumer confidence is starting to look better. Employment has stabilized. The housing market seems to be also improving now. And also as we look for a brighter outlook for the Eurozone, which is the number one most important factor for the export sector of Denmark, we do believe that consumption can actually continue to rise, but very modestly. And we do expect to have a increase in real wages this year.
Some analysts argue that while overvalued, to describe the Swedish property market as in a bubble is an exaggeration. But what do you think? Is this indeed one of the biggest concerns for the Swedish economy at present?
There's no doubt if you ask the Riksbank, there's a very high concern for what's going on in the housing market. These so-called macroprudential issues, they play a large role in Sweden, and yes, there could be signs that the Swedish market is showing some signs of a bubble, and we do expect prices to come down next year. But also remember, this is an economy that has been growing at a relatively brisk pace. They came more or less unscattered out of the financial crisis, and rates are very low. And as we saw today, not any significant signs of inflationary pressure building. So is that the biggest concern? It's something that you should definitely look out for. But basically, the biggest concern for the Swedish economy has to be seen in relation that Sweden is a small, very open economy, very reluctant reliant on what's going on in the global economy. So if we somehow see a setback in global growth, that will be much more severe for the Swedish economy as we see it. But of course we are very aware of what's going on in the Swedish housing market, what's going on in the Norwegian housing market. Especially the latter seems to have cooled down recently.
And just to finish off, Arne, with the dollar drifting lower amid heightened political uncertainty in the US and a prolonged pace of monthly asset purchases by the Fed, you might have thought AAA countries such as Sweden and Norway would have been set to benefit. With all that we have discussed in mind, could you please give brief mid-long-term outlooks for the Swedish krona and the Norwegian and Danish krone?
No, I think it's fair to say that investors hasn't really been buying into Norwegian and Swedish krona despite the political jitters in the US. That was very much a Eurozone, Euro debt crisis story. We believe at the moment that both the Norwegian krona and the Swedish krona is fundamentally undervalued against the Eurozone. Growth is higher. There were probably high rates earlier. Fundamental balances like current account, public deficits, debt, and so on. They're on a much stronger footing compared to the Eurozone. So the fundamental case is still there, and we do believe that at least on a 6 and a 12-month horizon, probably also on a 3-month horizon, that both the Norwegian krona and the Swedish krona will appreciate against the euro. But very short term, maybe the next couple of weeks, maybe a month, 2, we should also remember there's a lot of positive signs for the Eurozone. We believe that euro sentiment will continue to improve, tighter spreads for Italy, Spain. Maybe the key indicators will continue to surprise positively, a pressure up on the Jonior rates, and also that liquidity is an issue, especially for Norwegian krona. So a bit more concerned short term, but on a slightly longer basis, we're still positive and believe that Euro NOK will eventually move well below 8, and also that the Euro Stoxx will move towards 750.
Arne, thank you so much for your time and perspective today. Well, viewers, that's all from me for the moment, but for more currency forecasts, tune back in tomorrow for our last targets and focus of the week. Goodbye for now.